Behind the Shades.
So my name is Rayne, and it is spelled Rayne. And I say that because you can find me under that name. It's Hypnotherapy with Rayne. And that's my website. That's how you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and anywhere else is linked on my website. So as long as you can spell my name, you can find me. And what I am about, let me see. Like you said, empower moms. So I have a method that's empowered parenting. It's finding calm in the chaos. And it's specifically geared towards moms who have children with mental health issues, mental health challenges. And it's helping them reprioritize themselves, lose the mom guilt, which is the biggest thing, right? And really just kind of find peace again in the family and in their relationships with their child, with their other family members, with their partner, with their friends. And get some calm back to the chaotic life that comes with raising a child with mental health challenges.
I know some of my friends would love to speak to you because you're trying to help them be better. And when you mention mom guilt, that's something I've heard from many of my female friends. So describe to us, what is mom guilt and how does it impact the lives of mothers?
Mom guilt, it seems to be something specific to moms. It seems to not affect dads in the same way for whatever reason. I'm not sure what that is, but it really comes at you from every angle. So moms feel guilty right when they go back to work, or they feel guilty if they don't go to work and they stay home. Moms feel guilty if they make the child's lunch. They feel guilty if they have the kid buy the lunch. It's all these, like, whatever you do is just not quite good enough. It's an underlying thing that we want to do everything for our child, make their lives easier. We want to show up in the best way possible. You know, if your kid's upset, you want to go help them, right? It's a lot of this, like, trying to make life easier for your child. And I think it probably comes from the child was a part of you, and now you're still trying to, nurture it in the best way possible. And you just feel guilty about every mistake along the way. The kid falls down the stairs. Well, you feel guilty you weren't there right at the time to catch them as they fall down the stairs, so to speak. And it's certainly irrational. It's not something that you can do. You can't be everywhere all the time, and you can't do all the things all the time. Nobody's perfect, but it's just something that mothers seem to share, even though it's irrational. It's just something they all share. And I like to say that when your child suffers with mental health issues, it's like your mom guilt is on steroids, because there's just so many other issues going on that it just intensifies everything. And when I talk to dads, they don't seem to have the same type of guilt. I'm not sure why. I don't know what that's about, but it's not quite the same as it is for moms.
I wonder if it's like a pendulum, because you have like mothers who are the early caregivers and providers and instructor of the child, right? Because they carry the child.
Yeah.
They're breastfeeding if they're going to breastfeed, they're bottle feeding if they're going to do that. But the bond is so much closer. And then as a child starts to age, it kind of swings to maybe the fathers who are, okay, now I'm the protector of the child. Now I'm the benefactor of the child. I'm the provider. I'm the resource. I wonder if the guilt that mothers experience is more early on, and then the fathers are trying to experience, and they're experiencing it a little bit later. Because to your point, they experience it in different ways.
Yeah.
They seem to be experiencing it at different times in the child's life. And then when you throw in a mental health scenario in there, it's like, it's just uber mom guilt, uber
It really
dad
is.
guilt.
Yep.
Right? So when you're speaking to these women, are you pulling from an experience that you had on your journey?
Yeah. So I have 3 kids. And my middle daughter suffers with an array of mental health issues, anxiety, depression, OCD, PTSD, SI, all sorts of things. And we ran the cycle of different therapies, different doctors, different programs, inpatient hospitalization. We did partial programs, which is like they go to the hospital for the day, they come home at night. Home-based therapies when people would come into the house. I mean, the array of just, things that we tried. And what happens is it becomes this overwhelming, all-encompassing thing, and it becomes the focal point of the family, right? Because it affects everybody. It affects everybody's life. It affects your job. It affects your health. It affects everything. And it's just becomes central to the family unit. And as as the parent or as the mother, you try to fix it. It's what we do. We try to advocate for them, research for it, do the therapy for them, tell them what to do. It's like a control thing almost, like you want to make it better. And yeah, there's a moment when you have to realize that the whole giving from an empty bucket type of thing, right? If you're so depleted because all your energy is going into helping your kid, or doing what you think is helping your kid, sorry, you run out. You run out of steam. You run out of, your bucket runs dry. And it's really just helping women reprioritize themselves and their own health, because in reality, that's what's going to help your child. Because you need to be your best self so that you can walk beside your kid and help them on their journey, as opposed to doing it for them, which is, I think, what just comes naturally is you just want to fix it, right? Your kid's sick, you want to fix it however you can. And when it comes to mental health, it's not something that you can do for them. They need to really learn how to deal with themselves. That's going to be a lifelong journey. It's not something that goes away. So it's something that they need to learn to navigate. And I think it's hard for parents to step back, and, it was certainly hard for me to realize I'm completely running on empty. No good is coming from me right now, right? I'm functioning, but I'm so depleted that there's nothing positive that I can do. There's that moment where you're like, well, I have to take care of me. Put your own oxygen mask on first in the airplane crash, so to speak, because you just can't help them when you're running on empty. But I think a lot of parents just tend to go until they're falling apart. Their physical health, their mental health, like they're just falling apart. And that's just not the way to do it. We just think it is.
Yeah, I think parents sometimes forget that they're human themselves.
Yeah.
And I get it because I don't have children myself, but I do understand the dynamic that, well, I brought this child into this world. I need to be the provider for that child because that child is relying on me. Yeah. But if you're not well as a parent, if you're not healthy, to use your analogy, if you're not full in your cup to help them, right? Yeah. You're not good to anybody at that point. Was that something that you had to learn where you're running on empty and you're like, hey, Rayne, you got to take a moment and take care of yourself, because if this continues, you won't even be here long enough to see your child grow up?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It was to the point of, there was nothing left, right? I was just going through the motions and trying to survive another day, because you are in survival mode. When your kid has these issues, you don't know. You might wake up and it could be a good day, but even then you're spending the whole day waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak. You're walking on eggshells. You don't know what's going to happen next. And then you could wake up and it could be a terrible day. Or you may not even wake up because you're up all night. You just never know. And yeah, when you don't take the time to nurture yourself, you just end up running on empty. And yeah, I mean, I got to the point where I was just barely doing anything. I was just kind of surviving. I was for sure in survival mode. And that's not fair for my other children, right? Like, just survival mode. That's it. I was doing what needed to be done. I was getting through the day, getting to all the appointments, and then that was it. I was done. I was like, there's no energy left for myself, right? And it's hard to make that that internal shift to, well, no, now I'm going to carve out 5 minutes a day for me. I'm just going to, or now I'm going to walk away from the situation that's, you know, a bit much. So yeah, it took getting to that point, but I feel like it doesn't have to, you know.
Looking back, because that sounds more like a reflective type of comment. Why do you feel that you didn't have to go through what you went through?
Well, because I could have stopped it sooner, right? Like I could have, if I knew then what I know now, it's that whole, if only I knew then what I know now. You know, realizing that I didn't have to give 130%, because if I took, say, just a short amount of time for myself, then I would have had more. I would have been more fulfilled. I would have been in a better place to show up better, you know. That's a big part of it. And another part was learning what my triggers were, right? So if they're set off with something, so say your kid has anxiety, something sets them off and they're having an anxiety attack, and say, you know, okay, I also have anxiety. Well, her anxiety attacks causing me to have anxiety. And then you're just spiraling into this big ball of like, things just getting worse and they don't need to. Yeah, so it's not an easy thing, but it definitely is something that I think if parents come to that realization sooner, it would be helpful. You know, it help you face the challenges that are just, they're going to be there, if that makes sense.
It does. And I find that to be sometimes a difficult conversation to have, because we would want to tell parents, hey guys, for your own mental health, you may need to take a step back and sometimes put your children, or grow your children, raise your children to the point where they can resolve some of the things that maybe they're going to have to learn to do to take it off of your plate. And when you're speaking to women, Rayne, is that a difficult conversation to have, to tell the mothers, hey, you don't always have to do everything yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It seems to be an ingrained thing, like mothers feel like they have to do it all. It's just, and it's a self-worth too, right? Like I'm not worthy if I don't do it all, or you know, I'm not, whatever it is their ideal is, like they're not living up to their ideal if they don't do it all, or if they ask for help, it's weakness. And it's kind of getting past all of those, like those inner dialogue thoughts that are just not healthy. And it's different for everybody, but yeah, it's definitely, again, reprioritizing yourself and rediscovering your values and making sure that you're living out some of your values, you know. And it's hard. It's definitely hard if you have, you know, children like this or a child like this, and you can't leave them with other people, right? You can't just go get a sitter. But that doesn't mean that you can't, you know, take a 5-minute break or a 10-minute, like you can still do those things. It's just not going to be to the extent that you could maybe do with a typical child. You know, you can't go away for a weekend because, but you know, you can still do self-care. You can still do self-work, and, you know, make sure that you're not just zoning when you have 5 free minutes, you know, which is what you tend to do. You're so exhausted and overwhelmed and just burnt out that when your kid goes to sleep, you just sit and stare at a wall because you couldn't imagine doing anything else, right? But it's like, no, take that time and, you know, do a meditation or do something that's going to help you for something that's going to help build you up. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking to a few parents a few weeks ago, and I asked them this question, and they kind of took a moment to think about it, but they didn't have an answer. I was like, do you remember what you were before you were a wife, before your husband, before your father, before your mother? And it seems they forgot who they were once they became the person of that title. of a mother, of a father. And maybe sometimes when we become parents, we don't appreciate or we can't remember what the self-care looks like, because before we had kids, self-care is like every day, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then once you have kids, it's like, what am I going to do with myself? I have 5 minutes. I have no idea what I'm going to do. So when you're doing your self-care, what are some of the routines that you would do to keep yourself balanced?
Yeah. So for myself personally, uh, when I was to the point where everything was just, I was running on below empty, right? The first thing I did was literally take 5 minutes. And sometimes I would just get in the car and drive down the street, just sitting in my car, to start, right? And then it's okay, well, I'm gonna go outside, I'm gonna walk. I enjoy being out in nature, I'm gonna walk. And then I slowly started getting back to reading for enjoyment versus reading to learn more about your child's diagnosis. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna pick up a novel versus a educational book. And I am a Reiki practitioner. I've been doing that for over 25 years. So for me, getting back to meditative type of stuff and energy work on myself, things like that, that has always been a very routine part of my life, because I've just done it for so long. Getting back to that, because when you're in a state of chronic stress, that tends to be when you don't work on yourself. When you're feeling great and things are wonderful, that's when you're like, yeah, I'm going to take the time and I'm going to do all these wonderful things for myself, right? It's almost easier when you're in a good place. So yeah, it was just slowly getting back to those things and working on the guilt. Because there's just so much guilt in general. So when you add in the, dropping your kid off at a hospital, or, them, whatever activity they're doing when they're panicking, and just seeing your kid in that state, the guilt just heightens. So just, dealing with all of that stuff, but it started slow. It started very, very slow. It's kind of that, force myself to leave the house for 5 minutes was how I started kind of climbing back out of that.
I like that you took a step away from the home. Like, for example, I work from home and sometimes I'll just say, Terrain, you need to get up, go in your car and drive somewhere. I don't care if it's a Walmart. I don't care if it's like a dead end street, just somewhere, because you want to escape what is, I guess, the source of whatever potential anxiety you may have, issues you may have, stressors, just anything that would put you in a situation to heighten things that you don't necessarily want to experience. So for you, run it through to me, because if I was like a new father and I said, Rainey, I want to take care of myself, but I just don't know how, because you see these two kids here? Oh my God. Who wants kids? I want to put them up for adoption. I'm at that point, right?
Yep.
So how would you help me to make sure that, hey, Terrain, you got this, just follow these tips or follow my direction?
Yeah. So one of the important things is certainly stepping away. And, it might be harder to do if you're alone, right? You're a single parent or if you're alone, but it's the same thing if your child is in a safe space. So, you have a baby who has colic and they're screaming. You stick them in the crib for 5 minutes and walk outside. You can do that. Your kid's in a safe space. So with these kids, it's, maybe you're constantly vigilant and watching them because they self-harm or something like that. So there are times when you're like, I can't leave them. But the reality is you can put them in a safe space, even if you just go outside for 5 minutes, right? If it's when they fall asleep at night. You need to separate yourself from the constant chaos and the constant being alert and being in that heightened state. And it's easier if you have a partner, obviously. Take shifts. Listen, I know you've been working all day, but I've been home with this kid all day, because, a lot of these kids refuse school. That's a big thing. They're home all day. So they're home all day. They have anxiety. They're not going to leave your house. Maybe they need to be watched. All these other things. So you are on full alert. And if you have a partner or, a parent, or even a friend, something that is really hard to do is, for whatever reason, is to ask for help, right? So admit that, let people know, say, this is a really tough situation. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. These are the things that could happen. I need 10 minutes. Can you help me? And I think it's really hard for any parent to reach out and be like, hey, can you help me? Right? Or for people in general to be like, hey, I need help. But it's something that is a necessity if you don't have it in the home. But if you have a partner, then it's, I'm leaving for 10 minutes, and you get in your car and you leave so that you cannot be pulled back in. Because if you stay in the room, in the building, in the house, in the yard, so to speak, if you stay there, you're going to get pulled back in. You're going to hear the arguments, you're going to hear the yelling, you're going to, whatever's going on, so if you remove yourself physically and shut your phone off and just be away for 5-10 minutes, it's a huge mental break, right? Take a book, play on your phone, like play games on your phone, as long as on do not disturb. You just need to take that break. And again, if you don't have the support in the home, it's asking for help. And there are, depending on where you live, there are resources available that are hard to get. They're not easy. They should be easier, but there are, resources like respite care or something where you can get people to help you in your home. But that's hard. And the other thing is, when you do get help, it's not cleaning the house and doing the dishes and taking care of all the stuff that has fallen by the wayside. It's doing something for you. So that's another big one. It's hard, right? Oh, I have 10 minutes. I'm going to do that. No, leave. Like, go take care of you. That's still going to be there when you get back. Yeah. And that's the most important thing. And then asking yourself important questions. Like, what are your values? Do you value travel? Do you value outside? Do you value like what brings you joy in life, and trying to find a way to work that back into your life? Even if it's just small, maybe you can't go on a lavish vacation, but you can travel, somewhere local.
I could definitely see people doing that, where they take like 10 minutes away from their child and they're like, okay, I'm going to go wash the dishes.
Yes.
Or I'm going to find, they're going to like occupy because they're so committed to the role, right? It's like any free time has to be doing mommy or daddy activities.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something that I want to expand on, where you said ask for help. How difficult is that for some people to do when you're speaking to the clients that you have?
It's really hard. And it's this place where most people don't understand, right, how bad it can be. Because for the most part, these children, when you're out in public, they may seem fine. They may be on their best behavior. And then they come home and they just lose it because they've held it together to put on a show for, in school or wherever. And so people don't understand how bad it actually is. So I think there's a fear of people judging you when they realize how bad it is. There's a fear of giving away too much private information. That's your child's information. It's not really yours. So there's kind of that, like, well, I'm telling my children's secrets, right? Because you kind of need to share it with somebody. You need to share it with somebody. And that's why there's, if you can find like-minded, I do have a Facebook group that's on my website that is just, it's other moms like this. You need a place to vent where people will understand. But the thing is people, for the most part, want to help you. They just don't know you need the help. They don't know how to help. They don't know what you need. But if you're like, listen, I need to get out of my house for 10 minutes. Can you please come sit here and just watch TV with my kid and make sure they're safe? Most people will be like, yeah, sure. But it's that letting go of control for the 10 minutes and asking for help. I don't know why it's so hard. It just is. It's just a really hard thing.
It's like a vulnerability. And I wonder if parents feel that if they ask another parent for help, maybe they feel like they've failed.
Yeah.
In a way. Is that a possibility that they may be thinking that?
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of, probably unresolved issues they have with whatever they, stuff they've brought from their own childhood or whatever, what they think they need to do or what they think they need to provide. But yeah, asking for help is hard, but it's also, it's a necessity when it comes to your health. It's the bottom line is it leads to your own mental well-being not deteriorating, and your own physical health, because you're not sleeping and you're just on high alert all the time. It's really a necessity, but it's hard to do.
Yeah, because when I look at like physical health, many of us find it at this point anyways easy to go to the doctor and say, hey doc, my knee's hurting, my back's hurting, I feel like I'm getting the flu. Mental health, a little bit more of a difficult conversation for some people, right? They're reluctant to have that conversation. But when it comes to parenting and saying, I need help raising this child, I think that's a difficult conversation, because you're acknowledging that you may not have the answers. And for the parents out there, it's okay not to have all the answers. There's no manual. You're learning just like how everyone else is learning. And we've been learning as a society for thousands of years.
We still don't have it right yet.
We still don't have it right. So what's something that you'd want to tell the next generation of mothers out there who are growing up and saying that, Rayne, I want to be a parent. I have no idea how I'm going to raise my child that's coming, but I want someone to at least provide me with guidance. How do you help them?
Yeah. You mean before they have children?
Before, yeah, they're looking to have children and they're like, I need guidance to understand even how to raise them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, because you really don't know until you're in it, right? So I think the main thing is, if you can get support system in place before you have children, right? So when you come home from the hospital, you have somebody there to help you. And somebody there, people like to say, I'll come hold the baby. And a lot of new mothers don't want that. They want you to come cook food and do the dishes and clean their house or take care of their other children so they can bond with the baby, right? But of course, people want to go hold the cute little baby. But it's like, no, try to set that up ahead of time. Try to find support before you even have children. And now with the internet, you can certainly find, support groups online. If you find out you're pregnant, they have support groups online now where you can go and find other women who are pregnant around the same time, right? So you can kind of bond together as you go through the pregnancy. But yet, family, friends, whatever, let them know. Be like, listen, I'm going to need help, and you're on my speed dial. Don't be afraid to ask. And it's one of those things where you don't know until you're in it. You don't know what you're going to get, right? It's